Well, I want to welcome the two of you here today, and I'm so glad you've been able to take the time this morning to log in and be with us. I'm really excited about what we're talking about today. Of course, the whole topic is mental health and emotional health, and if there was ever a time when we needed to find out more about that, it's the hour in which we live right now. And so I have lots of questions. I'm going to be shooting at all of you, so get ready, fasten your seatbelts. But before I dive into that, I'm going to introduce both of you. And so the first one presenter we have is Corinne Mandan. And Corinne is a registered psychologist, social worker who works at Master's Counseling Service here in Calgary. Her clients include older children, teens, adults, couples, and families. And she has worked in residential care, group homes, family, school, and community settings, as well as the private practice as well. She's married to a wonderful guy. His name is Terry. They have three beautiful children. And believe it or not, they have been attending Royal Oak Victory Church for over 20 years now. And Corinne, presently, she serves on our worship team. And so it's great to have you with us this morning, Corinne. The other presenter we have is Jeremiah Lafayette. And Jeremiah is a registered professional counselor with the Canadian Professional Counselors Association. Jeremiah has been counseling for over 10 years, which also includes over 25 years of not-for-profit work and management experience. He has been producing positive counseling results with individuals, couples, families, restoring individuals' wholeness and health in relationships. He's dealt with issues of trauma, crisis, depression, anxiety, marital counseling, and also some mental health challenges as well. And Jeremiah is married to a beautiful gal by the name of Joelle, and they have 5 children, and they have been attending our church for over 10 years. And Jeremiah also is presently serving on our worship team. Not only that, his wife Joelle, she is on a part of our staff, and she helps out with our children's ministry. And so it's fantastic to have both of you here today. And, as I said, I'm going to be firing off a lot of questions at you. But before I do, what I'd like to do is kind of set a little bit of a backdrop. And as far as where we are living right now. And so here we are, we're stuck in lockdown for almost 2 months now. Many of us aren't going into work. We're actually working from home. Some of us, of course, we're not working at all. We've lost our job. So that has its own share of stress and anxiety. Of course, on top of that, our kids aren't going to school. We're teaching them at home. And then, of course, when we talk about lockdown, there's so many things that are closed. I mean, restaurants and gyms and movie theaters and rec centers have all been shut down during these last 2 months. Of course, if that wasn't bad enough, layered on top of that is the fear of economic shutdown and collapse. And then, of course, throw into that the fear of the COVID virus itself. And so that's kind of the backdrop that all of us are living in right now. And sort of with that painted there, I think the first question I want to ask you guys is what kinds of things is this producing in our lives, living in this kind of an atmosphere that I just described? And so, Corinne, maybe you want to just share a little bit first.
Sure. I'm, pardon me, I'm noticing there's so much uncertainty and we just don't know what to expect. So when kids say, when will I be able to go and play on the playground? When can we don't know. And with us, you know, we like to know what to expect and to have a timeline to work toward, right? And so this can feel deeply unsettling for us.
Mm.
And I think that this loss of certainty, loss of connection with people is so distressing to us. So we see a lot of that depression or anxiety, or, you know, just wanting, what can I stand on? The things that I relied on before, my work, my school. We don't have those structures in our lives externally right now to keep us focused, I guess, or to anchor our day a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremiah, do you
Yeah.
want to speak into that?
Yeah, I definitely would say that we're definitely in a brand new world today, you know, where it's unprecedented. We have worldwide global coverage of a worldwide trauma situation that has occurred within all of our lives, both individually, as families, as businesses. Everyone is involved with this. And it's not just that we hear a record or we have a letter saying, oh, over here in the country, it's really bad. No, we are seeing this everywhere live, okay, online through interviews. And that's completely, you know, even when we compare things like World War II with things like Vietnam, you know, bad circumstances and situations that have happened and created trauma and loss within lives, you'd still be a week or 2 weeks away before you'd actually get the report. No, it's happening now. We find out. We can just watch our prime minister give his daily update, you know, and just watch it. You know, that's unprecedented to what we've seen and how things have transpired, which then leads to other areas of newness that, although it might at first glance seem really cool and futuristic, is creating a bit of fatigue. You know, one example that, you know, I talk about is screen fatigue that happens. You know, a lot of people are getting very tired of, you know, first it was neat to have the Zoom meeting as we're doing right now, but now it's like, okay, that's great. When are we going to actually go back to physical contact meetings? And we don't know what's going to happen with that. It creates a lot of uncertainty that we'll be talking about as we move along with our discussion today.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, we maybe some of us used to have a problem with going on Facebook a little bit too much, you know, watching a screen a little bit too much. But it seems like now it's almost like, well, it's true. That's the only way we can connect in many ways with the people around us. And so screen fatigue is become a problem. Of course, another big issue, and you know, we've been hearing this as we've been calling people in the church and talking to them, of course, is the whole area of anxiety and depression.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so maybe you guys want to speak a little bit into that this morning.
Yeah, I think definitely when we talk about areas such as anxiety, depression, you know, they're all outcomes of all the areas, you know, of no control that we have because of having to socially isolate. Anything that was there before to begin with, if I had issues in marriage, if I had addictions that I was dealing with, all of that has been compressed now to my inner daily world of having to stay at home, or maybe having to work from home and having to deal with my family at home, dealing with my kids at home. It's all compressed. So if you had issues now, they're now compressed. And it's almost, the picture I like to use is the pressure cooker, that everything's being suppressed, but like a volcano. If you ever, I don't know if you've ever tried to put, I don't recommend it, but if you ever try to put your hand over a volcano, good luck, right? You can maybe suppress it for a bit, but eventually it's going to eventually blow up and poof, it's going to explode. And so we're dealing with a lot of pressures that are happening, which is only then, the outcome is only going to be increased addictions, increased, you know, domestic violence, increase of all sorts of areas, depression, anxiety that, you know, a lot of people are dealing with. And it might not appear to be, maybe 2 months ago, it wasn't apparent at first, but now we're starting to see that pressure starting to build up. And if not dealt with, we're definitely going to see huge increase, I believe, of issues like depression and anxiety.
No.
I also think that the more we're looking online for our information, as you were talking about screen fatigue, And what you're saying, Jeremiah, about the pre-existing stuff that we walked into this pandemic with, but where are we getting our information? We're getting it online, the news, Justin Trudeau and whatever, but we're also still getting information from Facebook, and we have to be very careful about what we put in.
Yeah.
Because so much of this, as you were saying, we feel such a loss of control, a loss of ability to influence how things are going. And what I find is that the more we're focusing on some of this negative messaging, oh my goodness, then it really starts quite a cascade of negative, helpless, frustrating thoughts and feelings. And the way I sort of approach a lot of the people that I work with, it's like, okay, well, what are you thinking about? What are you focusing on, right? Because that very much influences the feelings that we have. And together that works to influence the way we behave, right, towards ourselves. Are we being kind to ourselves? Are we taking a break when we need it?
Yeah.
And also towards other people, to our family, as you were saying, Jeremiah, they are the people we're in isolation with. But also, I'm seeing it when I go out in the community to get groceries. Wow, or walk my dog. I've seen like kind of meltdowns on the pathways. And it really has to do, I think, with people's fear and what they're focusing on. And I think we need to have some ways to kind of shift that sort of spiral a little bit.
No, it's very good. So some of us are dealing, of course, with things we've never had to face before. Of course, Jeremiah, what you said is so true. I mean, some of us had some of these things inside of us, and it's this isolation and stress that's bringing it to the surface. Of course, it wouldn't be complete unless we talked a little bit about family dynamics. Now, we all know the saying, abstinence makes the heart grow fonder. Of course, under lockdown, we've had less of that. And so the family dynamics are very different now. And so maybe you guys could speak into a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Corinne?
You go ahead.
All right. So with me, one of the messages that I've been sharing with families and with clients, especially those with family, and this also applies for individuals as well. So if you're single and you're just alone in your apartment, it's the concept of creating space. Okay, we have to create space. And when we say create space, I don't mean social isolation. I mean more in the sense of creating a time of individual space. I need to have healthy time where I have time of my own, that I'm spending time from a church perspective. I need time to maybe pray, time to listen to some worship music, time to just spend some time in prayer. And then the other side of it is I have to create intentional space with my family. And the way I like to look at this, especially with families, is this is a way where you have to connect with other people. We have to create intentional space for connection. And so out of that, we have to split that into two subgroups, okay? Especially if you have a family. The first part is your partner, all right? You have to create space. It's so easy with life to get all muddled up and messed up together, especially with the kids and all the other dramas that are happening within the world, in our own lives, in our families' lives, and in just everyday life. So we have to create that space for our partner, okay? Even if it is just going for a walk with our partner, doing something. Then we have to create intentional space with our family, with our friends, our children, whatever that looks like. And this is why it also applies to the single individual. Out of that, we now create healthy boundaries within this space that creates a normalization within our lives that helps us to be able to deal with these things more. And we're also more connected with ourselves, all right, in order to be more present with our partner and our family and friends. So creating space, super important.
Yeah, no.
So you're really talking, sorry.
No, you go.
You're really talking about building the resilience of the person, right? And then also building resilience of the family. And that is so good. Like I remember when my kids were little, and there's about 5 years between my oldest and my youngest. And so when the youngest needed to have a nap, my other kids still needed to have quiet time,
Yeah.
right? I think, that's not a bad thing. That we can, have permission maybe, or grant ourselves and our family members permission to have a little bit of time, and what can they do there, right? What's your plan when you're having some quiet time? What does that mean, right? Like, well, it means that you're not, knocking to come and play games together or whatever. Just means you need to do your thing for X number of time, and whatever. So I think even with little kids, you can still kind of manage that. And also to build, I think, on this idea is that what if we're not okay in the moment, right? If I'm getting really angry and somebody's trying to raise an issue with me, it's not going to work. Right now, I'm assuming that's maybe not just me, but there's an issue of timing, right? And so if I'm what we call flooded, I'm in a stress response, I'm not going to hear you terribly well. So maybe we need to also have permission to take a break and say, you know what, I hear your issue, and that's really good. I find I just need a break. Can we come back and talk about that in a few minutes when I'm calmer?
Right. So certainly giving people space to and giving people permission, I think that's
Yes.
very important. Because all of us are going to be experiencing higher levels of frustration, of stress, of worry, and we might not be on our best game. And so love would say, look, let's bear with one another,
Yes.
and give each other some space, and we'll be able to navigate through this thing together a little bit better. Now,
Right.
one question I wanted to ask is, we have been in lockdown in a very different kind of an environment. What are some of the signs of, let's say, poor mental or emotional health? I mean, how do I know if I'm experiencing that in my life right now?
That's a great question, because I think we can kind of, it's a bit of a boiled frog thing, in that, the idea of if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out. But if it's just a gradual increase, we tend not to notice that so much. So sometimes people will notice irritability, right? Or just lack of patience, anger, frustration. Sometimes we can just be teary and cry for no reason. We're like, oh, that was weird. Things set us off at times that might not normally, right? Maybe we find that we're not coping so well, and we're using some of those behaviors that, maybe we're drinking more, maybe we're yelling more, maybe I don't know, we're just finding ourselves using behaviors that are not as healthy in order to cope.
Yeah, and so those would be some of the telltale signs right there, a little bit of list. And, maybe some of us listening this morning might want to do a little bit of a checklist on that. I know I'd have to check a few of those myself. So, Jeremiah, do you want to speak into that?
Yeah, I definitely there is no end, right? It's just looking at knowing who you are as an individual, okay? Or maybe allowing another person in your life to be able to speak into your life, going, hey, man, you seem off. What is that going on? Sometimes with, we're kind of giving the clinical answers right now. It's what we look for, when we're meeting with clients and stuff. But there's also just the practical go with your gut. I mean, if you're telling yourself and thinking to yourself at home right now and you're going, maybe I need to see or talk to someone, then that's just your body. That's just your mind's way of saying you should have done that last month. All right. You got to start doing it now. Okay. So that's just a real practical approach. Other things kind of added on top with what Corinne had also mentioned, I would say, is isolation, especially from any form of healthy connection. Just because we're socially isolated, just because you might not be comfortable with technology, even the phone call, everyone's been used to that for at least 100, 150 years that the telephone's been around. And so just connecting with someone, if you're not doing that, if you're isolating, that is definitely not a healthy sign. I would definitely say any suppression. If you feel something, but you're suppressing it, especially issues like anger. Unresolved anger is another term I like to use. Absolutely. Those are definite signs that if you feel that pressure cooker, as I mentioned earlier, the volcano in you is starting to build up. Hey, how is that going to be released? And if it's being released on your kids, if it's being released on your wife or at the concrete wall, or however you're dealing with your emotions or not dealing with your emotions, it's not a matter of if, but when it comes out in a negative way. Those are definite signs that something's going on. Your body's telling you, hey, I'm hurting. I need help.
Yeah, no, that's very good. We need to be aware of the signs. And what's going on
absolutely.
inside of us. Now, one thing I've noticed, and I've been trying to be more self-reflective during this time. Sometimes these times force us to do that. But I've noticed that I sort of am experiencing what you might describe as a roller coaster. And it's a little odd. Some days I'll wake up and I'll feel really good. Like, wow, I can take on the day, face the challenges. And then 24 hours later, I'll wake up and I'll feel like, wow, I don't even want to get out of bed. And, I have found that a little bit confusing for me because I tend to be kind of a steady Eddie sort of a person. And so during this lockdown time, I have found that just some real high highs and low lows. And maybe you guys could speak into that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I think in some ways well, in me, what am I focusing on? Right? A lot of it is, am I on my phone too much? That's not good for me. I know that about myself. But sometimes, you know what? It just is. It's just, today is a hard day, and we can notice that. And we can pay attention and say, okay, well, what am I needing right now? Do I need more care, more rest? Do I need to just go for a gentle walk, right? If I'm having kind of a down day, that's okay. We can notice that. We can notice it in our thinking, in how I am, I don't know, impatient, or I can't sit still while my kids are talking to me, for example. And then what do I need to do with that? Okay, it just is, and it's fine. We all have that come up. And it really sort of is an invitation, I would think, to some of those behaviors that can calm us, whether it's a nice cup of tea or go sit in the sunshine, right? For me, I'm really light sensitive, and I need to be in the sun. I'm the one, ripping open all the blinds in my house because it makes me feel happy, right? There are some nice opportunities to kind of minister to ourselves, whether that's in, worship and prayer, or as Jeremiah was speaking about, connecting with people who really do fill us, right? Or calm our anxious nervous systems. There are lots of things that we can do to just pay attention to that and be kind to ourselves.
Right. And so I think that is a big part of it is being kind, and maybe taking some extra time to be kind. And the Bible says that we're to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And so maybe this is a season where we do spend a little bit more time, focusing and taking care of ourselves, for sure. Jeremiah, do you want to speak into that roller coaster kind of?
I think definitely one of the biggest things, again, adding on to what Corinne had mentioned, is just recognizing, that we are in not just an individual, but worldwide crisis. This is trauma, whether it's a big T or little t, because everyone's going to, when I say big T or little t, big trauma versus a little trauma. I mean, I actually know people who are like, I haven't noticed anything different in my life, except for what I've already been dealing with. Well, good for you, but that's not the norm. There is a lot, the majority of people are being affected by this as well. And I think we have to be mindful of that, okay? Part of it is just recognizing there's an old term that goes, calling a spade, all right? In other words, we just have to say it. One of my favorite authors, she's a secular author called Sue Johnson. She talks about in one of her books how a lot of studies that are being done with the mind and stuff, they'll put the little electrodes all over the head and then they measure, you know, how you feeling today. Oh, I'm really angry. I'm really sad. But it's amazing how if they're at a heightened peak of emotion, just by even saying how they're feeling or what they're thinking, it brings it right down.
Mm.
You know, so I call that half the battle. So let's recognize that we are in a time where we have loss of control. We're in a time where we have lack of predictability. So then the question, of course, eventually is going to be, how do we create predictability? How do we create safety in our lives? So half the battle is just naming it, calling it as it is. I'm having a bad day. All right, now I just got to be careful not to project it on, you know, maybe my family, but I still got to say it. I got to be honest with myself with how I'm feeling, what I'm dealing with. But then now I have to look at ways and strategies to be able to move forward with my day and create mobility in my day so that I'm not walking in fear and, you know, in predictability, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
No, very good. For sure. And I think it's taken all of us a little bit by surprise, just how, you know, how challenging this can be spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Like we are in the middle of a storm, right? The world
Absolutely
is upside down. And, you know, I know that when we were chatting about this, this get together that we're doing right now, you know, a lot of the stuff that people are plowing through are things like depression and grief. And maybe you guys want to speak into that a little bit. You know, why is that? Like, why do I feel depressed? Why do I seem sad? And, you know, what is the cause of some of that?
This seems to be a real season of loss.
Mm.
You know, there is loss of freedom. We don't really talk a lot about that, but there is loss of freedom. The freedom to just go get groceries and be back home in a short time, that's just not our reality anymore, right? There's a loss of interconnection, right? Our bodies are wired to have interpersonal connection. And that's part of what I think Jeremiah was talking about with this screen fatigue, because our minds, you know, my neurons, I have mirror neurons, and when I watch you do something, the area in my brain that would activate if I was doing that is lighting up. So if I'm watching you do something, it's lighting up my brain, okay? So we are so structurally designed to be connecting with each other. There's a loss of that. And even though we try to do this online, it's like still a disconnect, right? Our brain's going, no. We're trying to mimic or create this, but it's not quite the same. There's a loss of, you know, just there's so many different losses. And as Jeremiah was saying, losses in terms of other people all around the world and death and this kind of stuff, but also loss of travel, loss of people who are graduating. There's so many people graduating high school and university and weddings, and loss of sort of our dreams and what we hope this time would be, right? And so, you know, clinically, there really isn't, like physiologically, a big difference between grief and depression. Okay, DSM, our diagnostic manual, says that basically the difference between grief and depression is that there's a clear onset with grief. But they can both last a long time and they feel exactly the same, right?
Yeah. So certainly, you know, much of this is connected to many of the things we've lost. And I think if we were to sit down and make a list, I think we'd be quite surprised at all the things that COVID has taken from us right now. Jeremiah, why don't you share a little bit, you know, speaking to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely want to leap off what Corinne was talking about with that loss, you know, and for me, from a summary perspective, it's that loss of control again. It's that loss of connection. All those things are so important. We're wired for connection. We're wired for relationship. We are wired to have control. We have what's called free will in our life, okay? And when we don't have that, oh my gosh, what happens? Well, we end up in that grief and loss. All right. Which is, to me, just a kinder way, from my perspective, it's just a nicer way of saying trauma. Okay. The results of that, the consequences of that, are where we end up with these other terms like anxiety, depression, all these different terms. One of my big hearts is definitely the issue of depression. Okay. A good, a fellow colleague, a good friend of mine named Dr. Dustin Now, we actually were texting this morning, just talking a little bit about depression, and he, one of his things he always says, he's like, man, 80% of all trauma, or sorry, I shouldn't say trauma, sorry, 80% of all depression, based on his research and study with his work that he's done, is based in unresolved anger. Now think of that, anger as a primary emotion. And if I'm feeling depressed, I wonder how much have I suppressed or oppressed in my own heart that is actually unresolved anger. That's an interesting thought to think about. And so think about what's happening. If I have lost control of maybe the choice I have to have friends, to see friends, loss of connection, the ability to not go shopping, as Corinne mentioned, and having to wait in lineups now, and can't look or breathe on everybody, can't touch, right. I got to wash every single banana now that I eat, all those kind of things. Oh my gosh, I believe that there's got to be anger in there. Yeah. And out of that, if it's not dealt with and if it's not resolved properly, we now have unresolved anger, and now we got some issues. And when it's not dealt with, the outcome is depression. And then of course, other outcomes are things like anxiety, fears, all those different kind of things that then pop in. How do I deal with this stuff? So just kind of a similar but different way of looking at things with what Corinne was talking about.
No, it's good. It's good stuff. So I guess one question I want to ask is okay, here I am. I'm grieving. I'm sad. I'm depressed. What are some practical ways of dealing with that, other than running and watching more Netflix series or numbing ourselves,
yeah, absolutely. Great question. Yeah. I think if it's okay, I'm going to jump with this one, and then Corinne can probably build up from what I talk about. I would say one of the biggest things that I've been encouraging everyone to do within this time is to just, very practical. I mean, I can go, we can always talk about different clinical stuff, but what can I do? Tell us, what do we do? And this is going to be absolutely ridiculously simple, and yet not simple, because it takes intentionality. And you got to start with a schedule. You got to look, what am I looking forward to in my day? What would I normally have done, even if I'm unemployed, even if I'm at home? What would I normally do? I normally would get up. What time am I getting up? If you're getting up at 10, 11, 12 o'clock, but you were normally up at 6, 7 in the morning, we got to get back into a schedule or a routine that will allow us to create normalcy within our life. Okay. The challenge, of course, with that is that this is where, if we have issues like anxiety, depression, grief, loss, all these terms that we've talked about, it can create an immobility within us that creates us from being mobile and being able to move forward in a healthy, functioning way. But one of the ways we can start is just take, it's kind of a concept I call just get up, take 2 steps forward, and maybe let's go to my book or my calendar or my phone, whatever I do that I would normally schedule with. And let's just write my schedule out. Lunch, dinner, I got to do homework with the kids. I got to make a phone call to my friend tonight. Let's something that I can look at and go, oh, this is something I can look forward to. I'm going to call my buddy tonight. Oh, hey, it's game night tonight. Looking forward to that. Let's intentionally do this. And that will then allow a normalcy within our lives. That's something, by creating a schedule, we can now control. That is now up to me. If I choose to do that, now I'm in control of at least something within my life. And since I'm wired for that, why not also control the ability to connect with other people? Now I'm taking positive steps forward to be able to now deal with what I'm dealing with. And rather than just going, what do I do? What do I do? Now I can take some small steps forward and begin with that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Corinne, do you want to speak into that?
I do. I do. This is so much of what we do. I could probably
Yeah,
talk for days on it.
yeah,
And this is, I like it because it's the meat and potatoes of what we do, whether there's a pandemic or there isn't.
yeah.
And so I just really want to thank you, Pastor Dave, and our church with the May challenges. Those are fantastic. Physical exercise, it doesn't matter how much. Maya.
Right.
Yes, I saw your pictures on Facebook. That was very good.
Yeah, I'm trying.
And it's so good, right? Because when I'm not feeling well, if I'm feeling really emotional, I'm not okay, one of the first things I need to do is to move my body, kind of clear
Yeah.
some of that anxious energy so that I can have a clearer mind and I can evaluate a little bit better just what's going on for me. So for me, that's absolutely vital. I love also the second week challenge. I don't know what the other two are, but gratitude, awesome. Because what that does is it takes our minds off of all the negative, I can't, I'm frustrated, and stuff, and directs my eyes to the things that I'm really thankful for, the people I'm really thankful for. And, you know, for those of us of faith, right, when we are out for a walk and we see something, we're like, wow, you know, I'm so thankful for, you know, how the trees, the buds on the trees, I've been walking a lot. I've been seeing every day how there's more and more green. And I go, oh, you know, it moves me to then worship and thank God. Look, thank you for this, you know, the green, spring, the bird song, whatever that is. And then it's just, you know, an easier leap into worship, and it redirects our eyes away from that negative stuff that frankly pulls me down, into much more hopeful, thankful mindset, right? And when I keep myself down into this negative mindset, what I actually do is I create a stress response in my body. And we know that with a stress response, it shifts the blood flow in our body. We know that, right? And it also shifts the blood flow in our brain. So we prioritize a stress response, a survival reaction, and it keeps me from thinking clearly. The blood actually is less actively moving around the prefrontal cortex, where I have complex reasoning and problem solving and executive function, planning things out and actually following through, right? Yeah. And at the end, I love what Jeremiah is saying, do something, right? Step out, just do something. Doesn't have to be huge, right? At the end of the day, you can look back on your day and go, look at me, I did that. That feels good.
Yeah. No, very good. Like Jeremiah said, some of these things are simple, but we need to be intentional about it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I know how much just physical exercise has helped me during this time. I have a goal, you know, it's a goal I set a while ago before COVID came, but, you know, it has been a blessing to be able to get out and to exercise even in my basement has made a huge difference. So now, of course, things change every day, and it seems like whenever you turn on the news, there's new news. One of the new things that we're going to be facing, of course, is things are opening up, and even this week, things are opening up, more things. And so some people are excited about that. They're going, woohoo, you know, finally I can step out and do things I haven't been able to do before. But of course, then there are others who might be a little more hesitant about that. And so I guess I want to ask you guys, what are some things that you can do when it comes to stepping out of lockdown, especially if you're dealing with some levels of fear about doing that?
No, that totally makes sense. First of all, I think it's important that we evaluate how much of it is fear and how much is actually realistic. If you have health concerns, if you have a lung condition, and you are considered a vulnerable person, is that really fear or is that wise? right? So first of all, I think it's important to say, I need to accurately sort of look at my risk, right? And then it is important, sort of like what Jeremiah was saying in terms of taking a step, right? Doing something. If we stay here in lockdown for too long, what can happen is that we get into an anxious mindset and we have isolated, and then avoidance becomes something that makes our anxiety even worse, right? So we have to be careful. It's like always when I'm talking about coping and this kind of thing, it's like some, but not too much, right? Like some sleep when we are sad is good, right? Helps us regulate and that kind of thing. Choose our emotions and our activities well, but not too much, right? If you're sleeping 14 hours a day, that's probably too much, and it's going to fuel a depressive cycle, right? Going out some, but not too much. Maybe people want to take their own, like make their own plan, take their own sort of gradual steps, right? And see how they do with something. So I tried something and, oh, this thing really scared me. Okay, take a step back. What do you want to do with that? Try again. Don't stop, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So those little steps are very important. And like you say, we can't stay stuck in anxiety and fear because that will just create more anxiety and fear.
And stuck and trapped feelings. That's not good either.
Yeah, Jeremiah, do you want to speak into that at all?
Yeah, definitely leaping off with what Corinne was saying. You know, how do we get unstuck from being stuck, right? Well, it's again looking at the things practically that we can do to control the situation or the environment that we might have to be in that we don't have control over. And so some of that might mean some education. Some of it might mean going on the Alberta Health Services website, AHS website, you know, and taking a look. What are things? How do I actually properly wash my hands? Okay. How do I put on a mask properly? All right. If I'm going to wear a mask, you know, if that choice has been made, making sure it's the proper kind of mask and that it's actually put on properly. Hey, if I'm wearing gloves, if I'm doing stuff like that, do I actually know how to properly dispose of a glove, to actually take it off rather than just pulling it off? You've just contaminated it yourself from doing that. So those are practical things that you can do to help support yourself to be able to alleviate in the natural, practically, those things, issues of fears or anxieties. Along with that, and this is again the work that Corinne and I do, is then we also have to be very mindful of what am I feeling inside. And if I'm like this, then, you know, it's like saying, well, dude, you need to breathe. I am breathing. No. Let's split that up. You are shallow breathing, which means that you're only connecting to what we know as this part of the brain, which is our emotion center. All right. We have to intentionally fill up. I call it a brain balloon. Okay. I use a balloon as an example. If inside of my brain is a balloon and I'm fear and anxious and stressful, it's all empty. Well, if this is a balloon, it's not blowing up. It's putting air in it, but it's not enough to blow it up. I have to fill it up so it connects to both the emotion and our prefrontal cortex, which is where our logic, our calm, caring side comes into play, and connect the two together. So that way I can go, oh yeah, I just got to be aware about my touch points throughout the day, making sure that I'm staying calm. Everyone else is having to deal with this. I'm not the only one having to deal with this. And as soon as I come home, let's say from buying groceries or from my day at work, I immediately take my shoes off, go to the sink, wash my hands with soap and water, maybe change my clothes, you know, so that if that's a fear that I deal with, then put on a clean set of clothes. And if that helps, then do it, because that's a practical thing that you can do. And then put the stuff in the wash and dry it. Just real practicality. But I'm still calm. I'm still centered with myself. And I will always add with what we talked about earlier, for those who do attend ROVC, let's also remember that we do have those things like scripture to remember that I have not been given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Yeah. Sound mind, I believe, connects both the emotion part of our brain and the prefrontal cortex. of our brain. That's so important and powerful
Absolutely.
when we recognize or have a revelation of that.
Yeah, very good. And so that almost leads us into, one of the questions that we had talked about, when we sort of brainstorm this. And, how can I use my daily devotions to improve my mental health? And so, I talk about devotions a lot. It's kind of a hobby horse of mine. And it's not just the opportunity for us to read the Bible, find out more about Scripture, say a few prayers here and there. There is some real benefits, emotional and mental, to devotion. And so Corinne, why don't you speak into that?
Yeah.
Well, you know that both Jeremiah are on the worship team. So you know that we like worship, we like the music aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to come back to something that, and you do that. I want to come back to something that you were just saying, Jeremiah, about shallow breathing versus deep breathing. Kind of what he's talking about is us activating our vagal nerve. Okay, so the vagal nerve starts in the brainstem and it wraps around so many of our internal organs, including our larynx. Okay, so when we sing, when we worship, okay, we are breathing more deeply than that panicky breathing, right? And we are also activating our larynx, even if it's a joyful noise. It might not be,
Might not be too joyful for others who are listening, but working for us.
Exactly. And so that actually calms our body, which is really great. And the other aspect to worship is that it focuses our mind where it needs to go, right? I have a playlist on my Spotify, and it's usually a lot of my favorite worship songs that we've done in sort of like the last year or so. And I was sort of looking through it the other day, and so much of it is around calming anxiety, right? And we did, I think it was Matt Redman song not all that long ago, and he talks about how praise counteracts and fights against anxiety. Well, that's my point, right? When I'm in that place, that's the playlist that I'm playing, right? It focuses our mind so that we don't sort of stay stuck in the of what could be, or regrets that I had in the past or whatever, but on truly, God's promises to us that he is our strength and our refuge. And Psalm 91 is amazing. And it talks about how, no plague will come near your home. Well, wow. All right. Like that, I just find that so powerful.
Yeah. So certainly having a time every day where we get alone with God and spend time in worship, in the Word, and be fed that way, refocus that way. I'm reminded of the scripture that he will keep us in perfect peace. And that word perfect peace is actually the word peace twice. It's double peace. It's like a double. But our mind needs to be stayed on him. And so that's one advantage of a devotional time every day. Is it gives us an opportunity to reset, focus our mind, our heart, our affections on God. Yeah. And so, Jeremiah, I don't know if you want to share anything about that.
Yeah, really not too much. I actually like your double concept there, because when you think about it, when we are, I think really when we talk about devotions, it's allowing ourselves to be creative in who we are and what we enjoy doing. So if you like having a double, then have a devotion in a double. Create a 3D moment. Oh, I like that. That was a new one. So create a 3D moment, I love that, and do it. If worship is your thing, then do some worship, read some word. If you're in a state of, again, let's say we're breathing, taking a deep breath in and out goes, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Just remembering those mindful techniques in however creative capacity we want to do, right? Rather than just having this religious, I must just read the Bible and just read it. Oh, no, no, no. We want, maybe more of my Bible background, but we want the Bible to read us,
Mhm.
And so one of the ways, if that means having, your double, then go for it, be creative. Don't be, if you're not a morning person, then do your devotions at night
Mhm.
before you go to bed. Some people, that's what helps them, because their brain, as soon as they shut their eyes, it starts spinning and going, oh my gosh, tomorrow I've got to, no. Today, this moment had enough worries of its own. Let's not worry about tomorrow. Let's just focus on this moment right now. And maybe the evening is when you actually need to amp up some of your prayer and devotional time.
Yeah. No, it's really good. Now, let's say I have a family member or a friend who's struggling with some mental or emotional distress. I mean, what can I do about that? I mean, that can be very tenuous, especially if it's someone really close to me. What's the best way to approach that situation? Green?
Okay. Um, really the first thing is I know you've preached on this before, Pastor Dave, about being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Okay. A lot of times when people are sharing very deep, big, meaty things, it scares people. Okay. So even when a client says to me that they're feeling suicidal, I have a reaction in my body. It's like, ugh, in my stomach, but I'm aware of it. I pull out my breathing, like Jeremiah says, and I say, okay, can you tell me a little bit more? What's going on for you? What's this like for you? I put my stuff aside just for a moment to truly hear what their experience is, to accept. Interestingly, and I think, Jeremiah, you mentioned that with your neuroscience comment, that when people take the time to ensure that we feel truly heard and understood, clinically, our anxiety levels start coming down.
Yes.
Okay. Our stress response just starts coming down. Okay. So that's always a really nice way to start, is if we have the time and space in the moment to just really hear them and try to understand where they're coming from. That's massive in terms of help. And even research in terms of what makes a therapist effective kind of says it doesn't really matter what their therapeutic model is. It's that connection, their ability to help you truly feel heard and understood.
Yeah. Wow. So in some ways, I mean, all of us have the ability, not professionally, but we all have the ability to have a little bit of a therapist in us, just by doing
Absolutely.
that. Jeremiah, anything
Yeah.
comes to your mind on that?
Yeah, definitely. With again, going on top of what Corinne said, is definitely two things really that come to my mind right now in this topic. Is the reality is whoever we're talking to right now, it's not like I'm just randomly Facebooking someone, hey, I need to talk to someone. No, those who we are connecting with, those we were talking with on phone or through video, are the people that we already know or have some form of connection with, even if it is just, that person I saw every day that I've worked with for the last 5 years, and just reconnecting with them. Hey, how are things going? Yeah, good. Can't wait to get back to work, And so connection is good. And out of that, there's always what I call that gut. You just sometimes know something's off, something's not right. But this is where most people just stop and go, you know what, I'll wait till the next person. No, this is where we have to be bold and sometimes ask the question, hey, this is really uncomfortable for you, and this might be uncomfortable for you, but are you doing okay? As simple as that. Are you doing okay? We have to be bold and ask that question, especially if that something's going on, something doesn't feel right. Just, hey, is everything going okay? Is everything all right? And even if they're like, oh, no, I'm fine, man, that's okay. But just then reiterate and go back and go, hey, I just want you to know I'm here for you. And if you ever do want to chat, just know I'm here for you. What that does is it creates safety within the other person to know that maybe I do need to talk to someone, or this person, let them make that decision. It also creates space for that person. And you yourself are also now being present for that person. whether it is a family member, whether it's a friend, a coworker. So you're just being present for that. Hey, I'm here. And I'm not going to try to fix it. That's for the guys out there watching this,
Mhm.
because guys have a tendency to want to fix everything.
Mhm.
Just be present. Okay. You've pretty much just saved half of your premarital counseling right there, if you can catch that. Okay. And just be present. Okay. Just listen. I have no idea what you're going through. Okay. If you're someone who lost a job, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine if you're part of the third phase. They just announced yesterday in Alberta, the third phase will be the middle of June. Oh my gosh, that's 4 months of businesses going, we're having a hard enough time just making it 1 month. Imagine if you're now part of that third phase. So I have no idea what you're going through, but I just want to be present. I want to be with you and be here to support you. If you need to talk, I'm here. Okay. Or I can help direct you to someone who maybe can if you need someone else.
Mm. Yeah, fantastic. I can't believe how much time has just soared by here. It's been so
Yeah.
good. I do want to end with one more question.
Mm.
And, this is something that I think some of us struggle with. But if I begin to seek out professional help, so, from someone like yourselves,
Mhm.
does that mean that I'm a failure as a Christian? So some people actually believe, well, I don't want to go see a therapist, a psychologist, because that just says that, I don't have enough faith. I'm not living my Christian life the way I should. And so, Karine, do you want to just share on that a little bit? And then Jeremiah, you can jump in.
Sure.
Sure. No, please don't think that, because here's the thing. We all are a very intricate connection of mind, body, spirit, emotion. And when we say you haven't prayed enough, or you need to just, okay, sometimes we aren't always kind to each other, and I really hope that people don't have that message. But often when clients come in, and I work in a Christian counseling practice, I am so blessed to have some of the wonderful counselors that when I'm struggling, I can say, knock on the door, hey, do you got a minute? And they sort of minister to me across so many areas, and it fills me. And as a therapist, when people come to me and then they say, yeah, I'm a Christian and I've got this or that, I'm like, awesome, good, because now we have exponentially more options, more things that we can walk with you in, and there's more resources, I guess, right? I mean, God is Jehovah Rapha. He is our healer. He is Jehovah Shalom, our God of peace. Like, awesome, right? So I would just encourage people to maybe notice those feelings, notice those fears like that might come up, and set it aside just long enough to step out, give it a shot, because it doesn't mean that you are deficient in any way. We all struggle.
Yeah. And of course, in the Bible, Jesus is called one of his names is he's the wonderful counselor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jeremiah,
absolutely.
a few thoughts.
Yeah. I think practically it's good to know. I deal with both, those who consider themselves Christians, those who are of different multicultural or different belief systems, all right, faith backgrounds. And I would say all the camps, whatever you want to call it, from a worldwide perspective, everybody deals with issues of things like shame and just the fear of having to even go talk to someone. Because again, it's that control. I actually have to trust someone. Are you kidding me? I'm trying to control myself, but it's not working. And so at some point, that person has to come to a realization to go, I need to relinquish some of this control and begin to maybe seek out some counsel, which is where counselors and psychologists come into play. Okay. The next part I'm going to say, this is kind of that, hopefully this has come out the wrong way, but anyone who's maybe just checking out, what's this church thing? Oh, this is an interesting kind of thing. This is not the normal church service. This is that part where, you can go go off, watch YouTube, do something different. I'm just talking to those who maybe considers themselves a believer or a regular attender of, Royal Oak Victory Church, the church that where you pastor, Pastor Dave. I would again agree with you. This is where we have to remember, all right, Jesus himself says, I am the wonderful counselor, Prince of Peace. Okay. And this is where, if you're going to Jesus to meet your needs, the next step that a lot of people do is then they go to their pastor for that spiritual support and help. Okay. That is a little more easier and kind of a normal next step that happens. And then really the only difference between you and I is you're dealing, in my opinion, is that you're dealing more with not that you don't have understanding or training in areas of counseling and stuff like that, but you've got more of a heart and passion towards that spiritual side. Whereas individuals like Corinne and myself and other therapists that are out there of maybe a faith background have more of that soul component, which is mind, emotions, will, okay, the soul part of the body. And that's really what our passion, where we've really focused our training. And then what an amazing opportunity for collaboration. That person's now going to the pastor goes, all right, now maybe you might want to consider seeing someone else to help with the clinical side of things. Okay, you're coming in with the spiritual approach, we're coming in with the clinical side of approach, and then holistically we're coming together. And then with that individual's faith in God, what a beautiful combination and opportunity to bring healing and restoration within someone's life in their journey, to be able to walk through even these circumstances that we're in right now, to be able to walk in peace, and be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicely said.
Yeah, very good. Very good stuff. Well, this has been awesome. I mean, I wish we could go for another hour. Such, practical, relevant stuff. But we're going to wrap it up. And I think maybe the best way to wrap it up is, I know that some people who are watching today are, they're maybe struggling with some of the things we talked about. And so, I want to give you guys an opportunity to just throw out your shingle a little bit. Let us know where you're at. And so, Corinne, maybe share, how we can get in contact with you.
Sure. So I am at Masters Counseling, and I don't know, I could give you the phone number. Is that awkward? I don't know.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, so that's 403-253-7135. So we have 7 or 8 different therapists there. And like Jeremiah said, we see Christian individuals as well as people from cultural, religious backgrounds, that kind of thing. We never push the religious thing. We can't legally anyways. And so it's just really meeting people where they're at, coming alongside them in more of a discipleship kind of posture, and walking alongside them as they walk towards their goals. And there are so many different therapists there that we can, if you want a male counselor, we have that. If, there are people who specialize in working with, different populations. So I love coming alongside people. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Jeremiah?
Yeah, I'm at a place called New Life Counseling. I'm over in the northwest part of Calgary. But I think as a lot of therapists are encountering, it's not, we're not limited anymore, which is kind of cool, to just a location. We're basically virtually worldwide now because of online counseling. And I think it's good to know that even just as you and I are talking right now, this is what online counseling is like. Hey, Jeremiah, tell me, how can I deal with this? I may be talking a bit, I'm listening to you, a little bit of patter, but more with that clinical approach, focusing specifically on your needs, on the areas that you're needing help and support with. So it's just an amazing opportunity for wherever you're at. Okay. And otherwise, I would encourage people to check out the website. That's newlifecounseling.life. Two L's in counseling. It's a Canadian thing. My phone number is 403-690-8617, and that can be text is fine as well. Just because some people, like I say, even prior to COVID, still deal with issues of anxiety and depression, and maybe have a hard time making that call. But texting is a lot of times more easier. So I definitely encourage people. Yeah, if you have a hard time calling, text. Hey, I need to talk. Great. Well, just text. That's totally fine. Make it safe and comfortable for everyone that way.
No, fantastic. No, it's great to have, resources like that. It's awesome to be able to have you guys and have you guys here today and as part of our church family. It really is strength. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time this morning to be with us. And, we're not out of the woods yet. We need to really take care of ourselves. And I just want to tell everyone out there, there's been a lot of nuggets and practical advice that has been shared here today. And I want to encourage all of you just to take that, find out, where you're at and apply it into your own life. And so I want to say thanks for coming on, and we look forward to doing some more connection in this way.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for giving space as well to be able to, for us to share our hearts as well to you and your congregation as well, Pastor Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Okay. God bless.
You as well. Thank you.